The garden had turned cold. Seconds ago, Veronica had been wrapped in J1's arms, dreaming about their future. Now she stood frozen, her phone clutched in trembling fingers, staring at the man she loved like she was seeing him for the first time. J1, she repeated slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. The night of your accident. Were you alone in the car? The color had drained completely from his face. His sharp jawline was tight, his dark eyes swimming with something that looked terrifyingly like guilt. The tattoo on his neck seemed darker against his suddenly pale skin. Veronica, I can explain. That's not an answer. She stepped back, and the distance between them felt like miles. Yes or no? Were you alone? The silence stretched between them like a blade. The sunset that had seemed so beautiful moments ago now cast long shadows across the garden, turning everything sinister. No, J1 finally said. I wasn't alone. The word hit Veronica like a physical blow. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Another woman. A secret relationship. A betrayal that would shatter everything they had built together. Who was she? J1 moved toward her, but his legs were still weak from the rescue mission, and he stumbled. Pride made him refuse the wheelchair most days now, but his body hadn't fully recovered. He caught himself on the garden railing, his knuckles white. Her name was Lin Wei. She was an informant. A witness against one of our rival families, the Zhangs. She had evidence that could have destroyed them completely, but they found out. They were going to kill her. So you decided to play hero? I decided to do the right thing. J1's voice hardened. For once in my life, I wanted to save someone instead of destroy them. Lin had a husband who had already been killed by the Zhangs. She was pregnant, terrified, and completely alone. I couldn't just let her die. Veronica's racing heart slowed slightly. This wasn't what she had feared. This was something else entirely. What happened? I was driving her to a safe house outside the city. A place where she could hide until we could relocate her permanently. But someone knew our route. Someone in my own organization had betrayed us. J1's jaw clenched so hard Veronica could see the muscles jumping. The truck came out of nowhere. Hit us at 70 miles per hour. I woke up in a hospital 3 weeks later, paralyzed from the waist down, with no idea if Lin had survived. Did she? I didn't know. Until about 5 minutes ago. He gestured toward her phone. That call. It was her, wasn't it? She's been hiding all this time, and now she's surfaced. Welcome back to the final part of this incredible story, fam. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, go back now because this episode ties everything together. And if you're new here, subscribe immediately because you're about to witness the most dramatic conclusion on this entire channel. Now let's get into it because we have so much ground to cover. Veronica stared at her phone like it might explode. She said someone tried to kill her again. Recently. She said she has a baby and she's been running for 6 months, ever since she heard you got married. She thought contacting you would put you in danger, but now she has no choice. Where is she? She wouldn't say. She said she'd call back in 1 hour with instructions. She wants to meet, but only if you come alone. Absolutely not. That's what I thought you'd say. Veronica moved closer to him, the earlier tension melting into something more complicated. J1, why didn't you tell me any of this? I asked you about the accident. Multiple times. You never mentioned another person in the car. Because I thought she was dead. His voice cracked. And because I blamed myself. If I had driven faster, taken a different route, been more careful about who I trusted, she might not have spent 6 months running for her life with a newborn baby. That's not your fault. Isn't it? Everything about that night was my decision. I chose to help her. I chose the route. I chose to trust the wrong people. He finally looked up at her, and there were tears in his eyes that he refused to let fall. And now I'm choosing to tell you the truth, even though I'm terrified it might make you see me differently. Veronica closed the remaining distance between them, taking his face in her hands. I married a MAFIA boss, J1. I watched you walk through an army on broken legs to save me. I've seen you kill people to protect the ones you love. You think finding out you tried to save a pregnant woman is going to make me run? There's more. Her hands stilled. More? The person who betrayed our route that night. The one who told the Zhangs exactly where we'd be and when. Jae-won's expression darkened into something dangerous. I finally figured out who it was. Who? My father. The phone rang exactly 1 hour later. They were inside now, in Jae-won's office, with Dae-young standing guard at the door. The atmosphere was thick with tension and the weight of too many revelations. Put it on speaker, Jae-won instructed. Veronica answered, pressing the speaker button. Hello? Mrs. Kwon. Lin Wei's voice was strained but steady. Is your husband there? I'm here, Lin. Jae-won leaned toward the phone. I thought you were dead. I almost was. 3 times since the accident. Your father has been very thorough in trying to finish what he started. The words confirmed what Jae-won had already suspected, but hearing them out loud still felt like a knife to the chest. Why now? Veronica asked. Why reach out now after all these months? Because I'm out of options. I've been hiding in different cities, never staying more than a few weeks in any place. But 3 days ago, someone found my location. I barely escaped with my daughter. And the person who found me. Lin's voice wavered. It wasn't your father's people. It was someone else. A woman. Korean. Young and wealthy, based on her clothes. Veronica and Jae-won exchanged a look. Hannah Park, Jae-won said grimly. You know her? She's my former fiancé. And she's currently holding Veronica's father hostage to force our cooperation. Silence on the other end. Then, it seems we have a common enemy. It seems we do. Jae-won straightened in his chair. Lin, I need the evidence you have against the Zhangs. And I need everything you know about my father's involvement in the accident. In exchange, I'll get you and your daughter to safety. Real safety this time, with resources and protection that no one can break through. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. But you trusted me enough to call. And you know I nearly died trying to save you once. I'm not about to let that sacrifice mean nothing. Another long pause. Then Lin spoke again. There's a motel off Highway 47. The Blue Moon. Room 12. Come at midnight. Come alone. My wife comes with me. That's non-negotiable. Your wife? Lin sounded surprised. I've read about her. The girl you married under contract. I thought it was just a business arrangement. Veronica leaned toward the phone. It started that way. It's not anymore. Interesting. There was a hint of warmth in Lin's voice now. All right. Both of you. Midnight. And Mr. Kwon? Bring weapons. Hannah Park's people are still out there, and they're getting closer every hour. The line went dead. Dae-young stepped into the room, his expression troubled. I don't like this. It could be a trap. Everything could be a trap, Jae-won replied. But Lin has information I need. Information that could finally bring my father down and end Hannah's threats permanently. And you trust this woman you haven't seen in 6 months? A woman who could easily have been turned by your enemies? I trust that she has a baby to protect. Mothers don't tend to take unnecessary risks with their children's lives. Jae-won looked at Veronica, and something passed between them that Dae-young couldn't read. Isn't that right? Veronica nodded slowly. She was thinking about her own mother. About Grace, who had twisted herself into something unrecognizable in the name of revenge. But also about the woman Grace had been before, the mother who had sung her to sleep and promised her the world. Sometimes love made people dangerous. But sometimes it made them brave. We're going, Veronica said firmly. Both of us. The Blue Moon Motel was exactly the kind of place you went when you didn't want to be found. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, and a parking lot full of cars that looked like they'd seen better decades. Jae-won and Veronica arrived at 11:45, giving themselves time to scope the area before the meeting. Jae-won was walking tonight, supported by leg braces and a cane, with a gun hidden beneath his jacket. Veronica had one too, strapped to her thigh beneath her dress. Dae-young's people were positioned at every exit point, invisible but ready. Room 12, Veronica said, nodding toward a door at the far end of the row. They approached carefully, Jae-won's cane tapping against the cracked concrete. Before they could knock, the door opened a crack, revealing a sliver of a woman's face. You came. I said I would. The door opened wider, and Lin Wei stepped back to let them in. She was smaller than Veronica had imagined, delicate and fragile looking in a way that belied the strength it must have taken to survive these past months. Her dark hair was cut short now, probably for practicality, and her eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen too much. In her arms was a baby. Maybe 4 or 5 months old, sleeping peacefully despite the tension in the room. This is May, Lin said softly, adjusting her hold on the child. She was born 3 weeks after the accident. In a hospital I paid cash to use, with a fake name, because I knew your father's people would be watching every medical facility in the city. Veronica's heart clenched at the sight of the baby. So small, so innocent, already born into a world of danger and violence. She's beautiful, Veronica said. She's the only reason I'm still fighting. Lin moved to the bed, sitting down carefully to avoid waking her daughter. Now, let's talk about how we're going to destroy the people who tried to kill us both. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in the dark underbelly of the Kwon family empire. Lin had evidence that went far beyond the Zhang family. She had recordings, documents, photographs that painted a picture of Father Kwon as something far worse than Jae-won had ever imagined. The patriarch of the Kwon family wasn't just a crime boss. He was a monster. Your father has been making deals with the Zhangs for years, Lin explained, spreading documents across the bed while baby May slept in a makeshift crib made of pillows. On the surface, the two families are rivals. Enemies. But underneath, they've been working together to control territory, eliminate smaller operations, and consolidate power. That's impossible, Jae-won said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Zhangs killed 3 of our people last year. We retaliated. There was a war. A performance. Carefully orchestrated casualties on both sides, just enough to maintain the illusion of conflict. Lin pulled out a photograph showing Father Kwon shaking hands with the Zhang patriarch, both men smiling like old friends. This was taken 2 months before your accident. Jae-won took the photograph, his hands trembling slightly. Why? What was he gaining from this? Power. Money. And eventually, complete control. Lin's expression hardened. Your father planned to merge the families through marriage. Hannah Park was supposed to marry you, solidifying the alliance and giving your father access to the Park family's legitimate business fronts. But you kept refusing. You kept insisting on doing things your own way, making your own choices. So he decided to remove me from the equation. The accident was supposed to kill you. When you survived, he pivoted. A disabled son could still be useful, especially one desperate enough to agree to an arranged marriage just to prove he wasn't broken. Lin glanced at Veronica. But then you married her instead. A woman with no connections, no family power, no strategic value. That was the final insult. Veronica felt sick. Everything about her relationship with Jae-won had been shadowed by his father's machinations. The attack on the mansion, her mother's kidnapping scheme, Hannah's involvement, all of it traced back to one man's obsession with control. Where does Hannah fit into this now? Veronica asked. She escaped custody. She has my father. What's her endgame? Hannah was promised the Kwon Empire in exchange for her cooperation. When that fell apart, she went rogue. She's been gathering support from Zhang loyalists who are angry about the alliance fracturing. Lin's voice dropped. She's planning something big. Something that will happen in the next 48 hours. What? A simultaneous strike against both you and your father. She wants to eliminate the entire Kwon leadership and step into the vacuum with Zhang backing. Lin looked at Jae-won with something like sympathy. She's going to kill your father, frame you for it, and then kill you while you're being hunted by both families. Jae-won was quiet for a long moment, processing the enormity of what he'd just learned. His father had tried to kill him. His former fiancée was planning a coup. And somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, Veronica's father was being held hostage by a woman with nothing left to lose. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do." The plan came together over the next 24 hours. Lin would provide the evidence needed to expose Father Quan's alliance with the Zhangs. This would be released simultaneously to law enforcement contacts, media outlets, and key figures within both organizations who had been kept in the dark about the secret partnership. Dae-young, who had been listening through an earpiece the entire time, agreed to handle the internal Quan response. He would rally the family members and soldiers who were loyal to the brothers rather than their father, creating a united front against the coming storm. And Veronica? Veronica was going after Hannah. "Absolutely not," Jae-won said for the 5th time. "I'm not letting you walk into a hostage situation alone. I'm not going alone. I'm going with your best people." "But Hannah specifically demanded me, Jae-won. She's holding my father. If anyone else shows up, she'll kill him. Your father abandoned you. He chose Victoria over you. He let her throw you out on the street. Why would you risk your life for him?" The question hung in the air, heavy and complicated. Veronica had asked herself the same thing 100 times since seeing that photograph of her father bound and gagged. "Because he's still my father," she finally said. "Because I need to look him in the eye and ask him why. Because if I let him die without getting those answers, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering." She took Jae-won's hands, squeezing tightly. "And because I'm not the kind of person who leaves people to die, even when they deserve it." Jae-won stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I spent my whole life watching my father manipulate people, control them, destroy anyone who stood in his way. I swore I would never be like him. But when it comes to you..." His voice broke slightly. "I would burn this entire city down if it meant keeping you safe. And that terrifies me. That's not manipulation. That's love." Veronica kissed him softly. "And I'm coming back. I promise." "You'd better. We have a wedding to plan. A real one this time. And a family to start." Jae-won pulled back, his eyes widening. "Veronica, are you?" "Not yet." She smiled through her tears. "But soon. When all of this is over. When we can finally just be us. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm counting on it." The exchange was set for midnight, 2 days after Lin's revelation. Hannah had chosen an abandoned factory on the industrial outskirts of the city, the kind of location that screamed ambush. Veronica arrived in a black SUV with 6 of Jae-won's most trusted soldiers, all of them armed to the teeth but under strict orders to stay hidden unless absolutely necessary. She walked through the factory doors alone, her heels echoing against concrete, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Veronica Johnson. Or should I say, Veronica Quan. Hannah's voice echoed from somewhere in the shadows. Then floodlights snapped on, revealing the scene before her. Her father was tied to a chair in the center of the open space, his face bruised and swollen, his clothes torn. He looked older than Veronica remembered, smaller somehow, all his dignity stripped away by days of captivity. And standing beside him, a gun pressed to his temple, was Hannah Park. She looked nothing like the polished socialite from the warehouse. Her hair was disheveled, her designer clothes replaced with tactical black, and there was a wild, desperate gleam in her eyes that spoke of a woman with nothing left to lose. "You came alone," Hannah said, sounding almost surprised. "I honestly didn't think you would. You have my father. What choice did I have? You could have let him die. From what I hear, he's given you plenty of reasons to." Veronica's gaze moved to her father. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Fear, certainly. But also something else. Shame, maybe. Or regret. "What do you want, Hannah?" "What I've always wanted. The Quan Empire. Your husband was supposed to give that to me, but he was too stubborn, too proud, too obsessed with doing things his own way." Hannah's finger tightened on the trigger. "Now I'll just have to take it by force. By killing a helpless old man? How exactly does that give you an empire?" Oh, your father is just bait. The real prize is you. Hannah smiled, and it was the most frightening expression Veronica had ever seen. You're J1's weakness. His blind spot. He proved that when he walked through an army on broken legs just to save you from your mother. So predictable. Veronica felt cold dread spreading through her chest. This isn't about my father at all. Of course not. Your father is nothing. A pathetic man who threw away his own daughter for a woman who promised him money and status. Hannah kicked the chair, making Veronica's father whimper. No, this is about your husband. About making him suffer. About taking everything from him before I kill him. You'll never get close to him. I don't need to get close. I just need you. Hannah raised her other hand, revealing a small device with a blinking red light. See this? It's a detonator. There are explosives rigged throughout this building, enough to level it completely. When J1 comes rushing in to save you, and he will, this whole place goes up in flames. Along with both of you. He's not coming. I made him promise to stay away. Hannah laughed, high and mocking. Oh, sweetheart. You really think he's capable of keeping that promise? He's probably already outside, waiting for the perfect moment to play hero again. That's what men like him do. They can't resist the chance to prove themselves. She was right. Veronica knew she was right. No matter what promises J1 had made, he would never actually let her face this alone. He was out there somewhere, watching, waiting, ready to throw himself into danger for her sake. Which meant she had to end this fast. Hannah, Veronica said, keeping her voice steady. Your plan has a flaw. Oh. Enlighten me. You think J1 is my weakness. But you've got it backwards. Veronica took a step forward, ignoring the gun that swung toward her. I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. I'm the woman who survived her family throwing her away. I'm the woman who faced down her own mother and refused to break. I'm the woman who married a mafia boss and became his equal. Touching speech. But you're still just. I'm not finished. Another step forward. You also assumed I came alone. That was your biggest mistake. Hannah's confident expression flickered. What? The factory doors burst open. Not the main entrance where Veronica had come in, but 3 side doors simultaneously. Dae-young's team poured in from every direction, weapons drawn, tactical precision evident in their every movement. But that wasn't what made Hannah's face go pale. It was the figure who walked through the main entrance behind Veronica. Tall, elegant, and radiating cold fury. Father Kwan. Hello, Mississippi Park, the patriarch said, his voice smooth as silk over steel. I believe we need to have a conversation about loyalty. The next few minutes were chaos. Hannah's hired soldiers, realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned, began surrendering or fleeing. Hannah herself stood frozen, the detonator still clutched in her hand, her gun wavering between Veronica, her father, and the approaching Kwan patriarch. Don't come any closer. Hannah screamed. I'll blow us all up. I swear I will. No, you won't. Father Kwan continued his steady advance. Because you're not ready to die, Mississippi Park. You never were. You want power, control, status. All things that require you to be alive. The detonator is a bluff, and we both know it. It's not a bluff. Then press it. Father Kwan stopped just 10 feet away, his arms spread wide. Go ahead. Kill us all. End this right now. Hannah's hand trembled. Sweat poured down her face. Her finger hovered over the button. She couldn't do it. She wasn't brave enough, or desperate enough, or crazy enough to actually follow through. Father Kwan smiled, cold and triumphant. That's what I thought. He nodded to his men, and they moved in to disarm Hannah. But in the confusion, no one noticed Veronica's father working at his bonds. No one saw him finally break free. And no one anticipated what he would do next. David Johnson, the man who had abandoned his daughter, who had chosen his new wife over his own flesh and blood, threw himself at Hannah just as one of her soldiers fired a desperate shot. The bullet meant for Veronica struck her father instead. He crumpled to the ground, blood spreading across his chest, his eyes wide with shock and something that looked almost like peace. Daddy. The word tore from Veronica's throat before she could stop it. She was at his side in seconds, pressing her hands against the wound, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. Veronica. Her father's voice was weak, bubbling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. Victoria, she threatened to, and I believed. I should have. Stop talking. Save your strength. You're going to be fine. No. He coughed, blood staining his lips. I'm not. And that's okay. I deserve this. After what I did to you. You don't get to decide that. Tears streamed down Veronica's face. You don't get to die and leave me without answers. Why? Why did you let her throw me out? Why didn't you stop her? Because I'm weak. I've always been weak. His hand found hers, squeezing with what little strength he had left. But you're not. You're strong, like your mother was. The real her, before everything went wrong. Promise me you'll stay that way. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. Daddy. Promise me. I promise, Veronica sobbed. I promise. David Johnson smiled, a real smile, the kind Veronica remembered from childhood. And then the light faded from his eyes, and he was gone. Veronica didn't know how long she knelt there, holding her father's body. It could have been minutes or hours. The world had narrowed down to this single point of grief, this complicated tangle of love and hatred and loss. Then arms wrapped around her from behind, strong and familiar. I'm here, Jae-won whispered, his lips against her hair. I'm right here. I told you to stay away. Since when do I listen to anyone? He helped her stand, turning her to face him. His own eyes were wet. I'm so sorry, Veronica. I know things between you and your father were complicated, but he saved me. At the end, when it mattered, he saved me. She buried her face in Jae-won's chest. That has to count for something, doesn't it? It counts for everything. Jae-won held her while she cried, while his father's men secured the scene and Hannah was dragged away in handcuffs. He held her until she had no more tears left to shed. And then he said the words that would change everything again. It's time to end this. All of it. Starting with my father. Okay fam, we're in the final stretch now and I need you to stay with me. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, drop a like, and comment telling me how you're feeling right now because I know emotions are running high. Let's finish this story together. The confrontation happened 3 days later. Father Kwon had returned to the family estate, apparently believing that his rescue of Veronica had repaired some of the damage. He was wrong. Jae-won walked into his father's study without knocking, Dae-young at his side and Lin Wei's evidence in his hands. He moved without the cane now, his rehabilitation finally showing real results, though each step still cost him more effort than he let anyone see. Jae-won. Father Kwon looked up from his desk, his expression carefully neutral. And Dae-young. What a pleasant surprise. This isn't a social call. Jae-won dropped the folder of evidence on the desk. I know everything. The alliance with the Zhangs. The accident that was meant to kill me. Lin Wei. All of it. Father Kwon's expression didn't change. If anything, he looked almost impressed. I wondered when you'd figure it out. You always were the clever one. That's it? Dae-young stepped forward, his fists clenched. No denials. No excuses. You tried to murder your own son, and you're just going to sit there? What would you have me say? That I regret it? Father Kwon laughed, a cold, hollow sound. I regret that it didn't work. I regret that my son is too stubborn and too sentimental to understand what this family needs. What the family needs is to stop being monsters. Jae-won's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. We can be powerful without destroying innocent people. We can be feared without being evil. Such naivety. Father Kwon shook his head slowly. You think power comes without cost? You think the Quan Empire was built on kindness and fair dealing? Everything we have, everything you enjoy, every luxury and privilege and protection, it all came from blood. Then we change. Starting now. Change? Father Quan stood, his frail body suddenly seeming much more dangerous. You think I'm going to let you waltz in here and dismantle everything I've spent my life building? I made you, J1. I made both of you. And I can unmake you just as easily. No. Dae-young stepped between his father and brother. You can't. Not anymore. The family knows, father. Everyone knows. Lin Wei's evidence has been distributed to every senior member of the organization. Your alliance with the Zhangs, your attempt to kill J1, the betrayals and lies and manipulations, it's all out in the open. Father Quan's composure finally cracked. You wouldn't. We already did. J1 moved to stand beside his brother. The vote happened this morning. It was unanimous. You're out, father. Stripped of your position, your authority, and your protection. You can't do this to me. I am the head of this family. You were. Now you're just an old man who tried to kill his own son. J1's voice softened, just slightly. We're not going to kill you. Despite everything, you're still our father. But you're done. You'll live out the rest of your days in comfortable exile, far away from anyone you might hurt. And if you ever try to contact us, ever try to interfere in family business again, that mercy gets revoked. Father Quan looked between his sons, searching for any sign of weakness or hesitation. He found none. For the first time in J1's memory, his father looked old. Defeated. Small. Your mother would be ashamed of you, Father Quan spat. No. J1 shook his head. I think she'd be proud. For the first time in our lives, we're actually doing the right thing. 2 guards entered the study, escorts for the fallen patriarch. Father Quan went with them without further resistance, all the fight finally drained from his body. When the door closed behind him, Dae-young let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. It's really over, he said. I can't believe it's actually over. The hard part is just beginning. J1 looked at his brother with something approaching warmth. We have an empire to rebuild. An organization to reform. Alliances to repair and enemies to neutralize. It's going to take years. Years of doing things the right way. Dae-young actually smiled. I think I can live with that. One more thing. J1 extended his hand. I'm going to need a partner. Someone I can trust completely. Someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong and fight beside me when I'm right. Dae-young looked at the offered hand for a long moment. They had spent their entire lives as rivals, competing for scraps of their father's approval, tearing each other down to build themselves up. But that was the old way. And the old way was dead. Dae-young clasped his brother's hand firmly. Partners. 3 months passed. The Quan organization underwent a transformation that shocked the entire criminal underworld. Operations that harmed innocent people were shut down. Alliances were rebuilt on foundations of mutual respect rather than fear. And slowly, carefully, the family began transitioning legitimate business interests into the primary focus. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and challenges and moments when it seemed like the whole thing might fall apart. But J1 and Dae-young held firm, supported by loyal soldiers who were tired of the old way and hungry for something better. Lin Wei and her daughter were relocated to a safe country, provided with new identities and enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Before she left, she thanked J1 one last time. You're not like your father at all, she said, holding baby Mei in her arms. I knew that from the first moment I met you. That's why I trusted you with my life. I almost got you killed. You tried to save me. That's more than most people would have done. She kissed his cheek softly. Take care of your wife, J1. She's something special. I know. Hannah Park was turned over to authorities, her connections to both the Zhangs and various criminal enterprises enough to ensure she'd spend decades behind bars. The last Veronica heard, she was bargaining for reduced sentences by providing information on her associates. Victoria, Veronica's stepmother, fled the country when she learned that her connection to the conspiracy had been exposed. Without Father Kwan's protection and with her wealthy husband dead, she had nothing left. Veronica didn't waste energy hating her anymore. Victoria would spend the rest of her life running, and that was punishment enough. Grace Okafor remained in prison, but Veronica visited her once. Just once. "I'm not here to forgive you," Veronica said through the glass partition. "I don't know if I ever can. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. Not what you did, but why you became who you are. Pain twisted you into something unrecognizable. I refuse to let that happen to me." Grace stared at her daughter with tears streaming down her face. "I did love you. Everything else was wrong, but that was always real. I know." Veronica pressed her hand against the glass. "Goodbye, Mom." She walked out of the prison and never looked back. The wedding happened exactly 6 months after the confrontation with Father Kwan. It was everything the contract ceremony hadn't been. Flowers everywhere, a guest list full of people who actually loved and supported them, and Veronica in a wedding dress so beautiful that Jae-won actually cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. "You're supposed to be the strong, silent mafia type," she teased as she reached the altar. "I'm supposed to be a lot of things I'm not." He took her hands, not bothering to wipe away the tears. "And you're supposed to be an ordinary girl from nowhere. Look how wrong we both were." The ceremony was traditional, a blend of Korean and Western elements that represented who they had become together. Dae-young served as best man, making a speech that was equal parts sarcasm and genuine emotion. Eun-ji, fully recovered, wept through the entire thing while pretending she wasn't. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, for real this time, Jae-won kissed Veronica like he was trying to pour every ounce of love in his soul into that single moment. The reception was beautiful. The food was incredible. The dancing went on until well past midnight. But the real moment came later, after everyone had gone home and they were finally alone. Jae-won carried Veronica over the threshold of their bedroom, his legs strong enough now that it barely strained him. He laid her gently on the bed, then lay beside her, just looking at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "What are you thinking?" Veronica asked softly. "That a year ago, I was a broken man in a wheelchair, convinced I'd never walk again, never love again, never have anything worth living for." His hand found her stomach, pressing gently. "And now I have everything." Veronica's breath caught. "How did you know?" "I didn't. Not for sure." His smile was radiant. "But I hoped. I found out this morning. I was going to tell you after the ceremony, but..." He kissed her before she could finish, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "We're having a baby," Jae-won whispered. "We're having a baby," Veronica confirmed. "I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be an amazing father." He pulled her closer, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Because to him, she was. "I love you, Veronica Kwan. Every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to love you." "I love you too, Jae-won. Through everything. Always." They made love that night with tenderness and passion in equal measure, knowing that their family was growing, that their future was bright, that everything they had survived had led them to this moment. And outside the window, for the first time in what felt like forever, the stars were shining. 7 months later, Veronica went into labor. It happened in the middle of the night, because of course it did. Jae-won went from dead asleep to full panic in approximately 3 seconds, racing around the bedroom grabbing bags and car keys and trying to put his shoes on the wrong feet. Jae-won. Veronica winced through a contraction. "Calm down." "Calm down? You're having a baby. Our baby. How am I supposed to calm down?" "By breathing. And by not crashing the car on the way to the hospital." The drive was exactly as chaotic as expected. Jae-won ran 2 red lights and nearly sideswiped a taxi, all while Veronica breathed through contractions and tried not to laugh at her panic-stricken husband. "I face down rival mafia families for a living," Jae-won muttered as they screeched into the hospital parking lot. "I've survived assassination attempts. I walked through fire to save you. Why is this so terrifying?" "Because it matters more than any of that." Veronica squeezed his hand. Now get me inside before I have this baby in the car. 12 hours later, after more screaming and swearing and ice chips than Veronica had ever imagined, their daughter was born. She was perfect. Tiny and wrinkled and screaming at the top of her lungs, with Veronica's brown skin and Jaewon's dark eyes and a full head of black hair that already seemed determined to curl. She's beautiful, Jaewon whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. Veronica, she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She looks like you. She looks like both of us. He sat on the edge of the hospital bed, angling the baby so Veronica could see her too. What are we naming her? They had discussed this for months, going back and forth between options, unable to agree on anything. But now, looking at her daughter's face, Veronica knew exactly what felt right. Grace, she said softly. Her name is Grace. Jaewon looked at her with surprise and concern. Are you sure? After everything your mother did. My mother made terrible choices. But the name Grace means mercy. Forgiveness. A new beginning. Veronica touched her daughter's cheek gently. I want our daughter to represent all the things her grandmother could have been if she'd chosen differently. I want her to break the cycle. Grace Kwon. Jaewon tested the name on his tongue. It's perfect. Grace Okafor Kwon, Veronica corrected. I want her to carry my mother's family name too. The good parts of our history, not just the bad. Jaewon nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what his wife was trying to do. This wasn't about forgetting or excusing. It was about transforming pain into hope. Grace Okafor Kwon, he agreed. The first daughter of a new generation. The hospital room filled with visitors over the next few hours. Dae-young arrived with an absurdly large teddy bear and an expression of genuine wonder as he held his niece for the first time. Eun-ji brought homemade soup and enough baby supplies to stock a small store. Even some of the reformed Kwon family soldiers stopped by, rough men with tattoos and scars who turned into absolute mush the moment they saw the baby. But the moment that meant the most to Veronica came that evening, when the visitors had gone and they were alone with their daughter. Jaewon sat in a chair beside her bed, little Grace sleeping peacefully in his arms. He was watching her with an expression of such profound love that Veronica felt her heart might burst. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. About how different this child's life is going to be from mine. He looked up at Veronica. I grew up afraid of my father. Desperate for his approval. Competing with my brother for scraps of affection. Grace is never going to know that feeling. She's going to know that she's loved, unconditionally, every single day of her life. She's going to be the most spoiled child in the history of spoiled children. Absolutely. Jaewon grinned. And I'm not even slightly sorry about it. Veronica laughed, the sound filling the quiet room with warmth. Come here. Both of you. Jaewon moved carefully to the bed, settling beside Veronica with Grace still cradled in his arms. They formed a little cocoon of family, all three of them touching, all three of them connected. A year and a half ago, I was sleeping in a cafe with $12 to my name, Veronica said softly. I thought my life was over. I thought I was worth nothing to anyone. And now? Now I have a husband who loves me, a daughter who needs me, and a future I never could have imagined. She pressed a kiss to Jaewon's shoulder. All because a mysterious woman called me with an insane proposition about marrying a stranger. Best decision you ever made. Best decision I ever made, she agreed. Grace stirred in her father's arms, making a small sound of contentment before settling back into sleep. Outside the window, the city sparkled with lights, full of dangers and possibilities and stories yet to be told. But in this room, in this moment, there was only peace. 1 year later. The Kwon estate was filled with laughter for Grace's first birthday party. Balloons everywhere, a cake that was way too elaborate for a 1-year-old who mostly just wanted to smash her hands into it, and a guest list that represented the new world Jaewon and Veronica had built together. Grace had learned to walk just a few weeks earlier, and she was determined to show off her new skills, toddling between adults' legs and giggling every time someone caught her before she fell. She's going to be trouble, Dae-young observed, watching his niece attempt to climb a decorative sculpture that was definitely not meant for climbing. She already is, Jaewon agreed proudly. Just like her mother. I heard that. Veronica appeared beside them, scooping Grace up before she could reach the sculpture's more dangerous heights. And I take it as a compliment. It was meant as one. The party continued into the evening, filled with joy and celebration and a sense of hope that would have seemed impossible not so long ago. When the last guests finally left and Grace was put to bed, Jae-won and Veronica stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Dae-young pulled me aside earlier, Jae-won said. He's met someone. A woman from one of the legitimate business divisions. He's thinking about proposing. Really? Dae-young? I know. I was shocked too. Apparently love runs in the family after all. Veronica leaned against his side, his arm wrapping around her automatically. They stood like that for a long moment, watching the lights of the city below. I've been thinking, Veronica said finally. About what? About Grace. About us. About the future. She turned to face him. What would you say if I told you I want to give Grace a sibling? Jae-won's eyes widened. You mean? I mean I want more of this. More family. More love. More of everything we've built together. She smiled up at him. What do you say? Instead of answering, Jae-won kissed her. Long and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I say that's the best proposition I've ever received. Even better than a certain contract marriage proposal that changed my entire life. Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Kwon. That's what I'm counting on, Mrs. Kwon. They walked back inside together, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future held. They had survived betrayal and violence and heartbreak. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. And they had proven, beyond any doubt, that love really could conquer all. The little girl with her father's eyes and her mother's spirit was just the beginning. There was more to come. So much more. The end. Or is it? Let me know in the comments if you want to see a spin-off about Dae-young's love story, or maybe a sequel following Grace when she grows up. The possibilities are endless, fam. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now go share this story with someone who needs to believe in happy endings. Love always wins. Alright fam, this is it. The end of this incredible journey. I need you to drop a comment right now telling me what you thought of this story. Did you cry? Did you scream? What was your favorite moment? Make sure you've liked this video and subscribed to the channel because there are so many more stories like this coming. Thank you for staying with me through every twist and turn. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.